In the previous video, we saw how to ingest external data from a website in the form of a RSS feed. So here we're going to see how to share that data across different components. So what we're going to do is actually pull it in. When we get the result, we're going to bind that to a list component, and upon selecting any of those items inside of the list component, we're going to share portions of that data with a number of other components. So how do we do that? It's actually a lot simpler than I just made it sound. Here's our onFeedResult function here. So whenever we get a successful feed brought back into our application, what happens is that we're going to set the feed status, which is the title of this view, to feed service. So that's our HTTP service down here. Last result, so this is the last thing that came back successfully. And then we have to sort of drill down into how things actually are inside of our feed. Now, since we're using standard RSS, things are going to be pretty standard, but it's always good to check. So what we need to do is open up our feed, and we can see that the first node that we have here is called RSS. So within our feed, we want to go into RSS, and we can see that we're doing that right here. So last result.rss. And then we want to go into channel. So let's verify that. So once we expand RSS, well, there we go, there's channel. And then underneath channel, we have things like title, which is the title of the website, and link to the website and so forth. But then down here, we have a number of different items. So each of these items that we see has things like a title, a link to the article. These items are all to do with the article itself. So we can tap into all of that data in that same way. Going back into IntelliJ, what we're doing is just setting our feed status to the title. So it's going to read the title of the website we pulled it from inside of the action bar's title. So as soon as we do that, I'm actually going to set selected index to 0 of feed list. And that's really the only thing I'm doing here. If we go down to look at our list component, we can see that I've given it an ID of feed list, so I can target it through ActionScript. And inside of its data provider, I have bound that to feed service, which is our HTTP service, last result again, and then we just go down through the chain. So RSS, channel, and then item. So it's going to populate our list with all of those different items as a data provider. We also set the label field to title. This way it goes through and it'll bring up the title node within each of these items and display that for the user. And that's really all we do here. By setting feedlist.set selected index to 0, it's automatically going to select that initial item for us inside of our list. So what does that do? Well, what happens is inside of our rich text component and our button component, we're binding a couple of things here. We're binding things like feedlist.selectedItem.link. So this is the link to the item. So whenever we select a new item, this selected item property is going to change. And so this link is going to change in our button as well. Same exact thing happens inside of our text here. We go to feedlist.selectedItem.description. So that short description is going to come out whenever we select a new item in our list. This is how we can bind data across components, and this is really, really powerful with inside of Flex. The one additional thing we're doing here is setting our TextFlow object of our rich text instead of just the normal text object, because we can then use a text converter. So I'm importing this text converter so import to flow, and then I pass in what I'm importing, and then I say which converter we want to use. We're going to want to output this in HTML format. So what happens there when we run this is it's going to bring in everything as that HTML format, And if this didn't happen, we would see things like this little apostrophe here sort of turning out strange because it's URL encoding everything. So for instance, if I actually go ahead and remove all of this text converter stuff, so we're only binding the description here. So let's do that and hit run in IntelliJ. What it's going to do is it's going to bring out the description without applying any of those conversions to it, and we'll see how bad that looks. So when we go back into feed, oh, you can see here it did a type coercion. So we're also going to have to set text instead of TextFlow, because TextFlow is going to it's going to want a TextFlow object and not just basic text. So that's a mistake I made. And we can see here that IntelliJ is letting us know that we definitely made a mistake because we got a compilation error, or rather a runtime error. So let's go in here and again hit feed. So this one looks okay. But if we look here, now remember that it said I've before, we had that apostrophe, there's apostrophe and hadn't, those look pretty bad. Here or there it might be okay, but oh, look at that. So you can see how problematic that could be if you don't actually use a TextFlow object and a text converter, depending upon your feed and your encoding, of course.